you hit all these walls and your brain is what's telling you like you can't do this anymore, and learning to just say like again, feel the emotion, sit in the moment for a minute and then just say, "Okay, like keep going." Because I think when you give up mentally, when you decide that you can't do something anymore, you've just set your limit and that's you will not be able to push past that because you've just said I can't.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the wild Mustang.
So you are back to tell us about your adventures. I'm
Yes.
so excited to hear about them.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's I don't know, it's wildly surreal that we were just talking. I feel like we were just talking about me leaving and now all of a
I
sudden it's
know.
done.
I know. It doesn't seem like it took that long. I mean, in reality, it was months.
Yes. Yeah.
How long were you out there? Was
6
it
months
6
almost
months?
to the day. Yeah. So I
Yeah. So it
left.
was like half a year ago.
Yeah, I know. I left March 9th and then I got to the Canadian border August 27th and then I made it home. I rode home and I got home September 8th, I think. So,
Wow. It's so crazy. You did it. That was
I know.
awesome. Tell us about your adventure. So last time we talked, and I'll link the episode down here. People absolutely loved that episode. But last time we talked a lot about preparing and you were getting ready to go on this crazy trip all
Mhm.
alone, which I think is maybe the craziest part that you did this alone. There were people helping you along the way, but really it was you
Yeah.
doing this. So last time we talked, that's what you were doing. It's been, I don't even remember when we did that, probably 8 months maybe.
I
Seems
think
like maybe you were 2 months out. You were kind of close to it, maybe
yeah,
a little bit more.
did January.
Um, yeah, so it's been a while. Let's talk about your trip and everything it entailed and the good moments and the bad moments and
Yeah.
and what it's like being back cuz geez, that's a huge thing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was I think just leading up to it, it didn't feel real until we were like leaving home. Honestly, even then it didn't really feel like it was happening. It was just like I've been planning this thing for 4 years. You know, the horses are in the trailer. We're driving south and it was just like the weirdest, I guess this is happening kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So it took us like 4 days to drive down to the border. Then, yeah, my dad and I were driving together for the first he was with me for the first week, so I had a whole week to bail. I decided that it was a bad
Yeah.
idea.
Which to be honest, I probably would have bailed at that point, and
Yeah.
especially after seeing some of the stuff you went through, I was just like, "Oh man." It was really cool to follow along though and see it as you went.
Yeah, it was super cool to be able to document and, like, share it with people. And I think it was, like, maybe week 4 that Instagram kind of for whatever reason, I don't understand the algorithm at all, but I think it was my week 4 recap video kind of blew up, and from that point, it was just wild how many people, like, joined along in our trip. So the first week, the horses were all empty, and we were basically just the first day I took the road instead of the Arizona Trail because it was the Arizona Trail brought you up to like almost 9,000 feet, and the horses and I had done no like physical preparation. They'd had 4 months off, and so the beginning of it, I was trying to like ease them into it as much as possible. So my dad had all of our pack gear was in the trailer, and the first week the horses were just like walking empty. But I brought them all with me. So and the dog had a couple days off the first week because it was just like realizing, I guess, how much physicality was going to be involved in the trip.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, at the end of the first week, I was still feeling fairly confident in our ability. And so my dad headed home. And then I had the guy who taught me how to pack and his wife ended up taking their like truck and trailer or truck and camper. And they met me at most of my campsites for week 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And week 2 was probably one of the hardest of the entire trip.
Really?
Arizona. I don't know what I was thinking because I planned the route and I like knew the elevation logically.
Mhm.
but I was still thinking that it was gonna be, like, kind of flat, and I don't know, like, I guess I was thinking I don't know what I was thinking because even Western movies, like, set in Arizona, it's not flat, but in my brain, I
Yeah.
was thinking that this is gonna be, like, fairly easy country to ride through.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, that's what we think of Arizona, and you were down there in March, I think you started, so you would think it would be the ideal time to be riding through the flat desert, and, like, even that looked like it was crazy. Didn't when you left, wasn't it snowing?
yes, yeah, it was the first snow that they had all year, so we drove down in the only snow that I think that they had the entire, like, winter season. And my first week, I think it snowed on us at least twice. We had some like nice sideways rain. My dad and I were sleeping in my trailer, and we had some like nice sideways rain and like freezing rain
Oh
coming
my
through the
gosh.
trailer. And put garbage bags up on the window.
Oh my gosh. That sounds miserable. Like, the fact that you were still like, "Nope, we're still doing it," is very impressive because I would've
This
been
is a good
like, "I'm
idea.
cold. I hate being cold."
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely like again was not expecting that from Arizona. So then week 2, we had our first like 2 big climbs. I do not live in elevation that I was expecting. Our highest peak is probably about 7,000 that you can like ride up to. Uh,
Mm.
so in week 2, we rode up to Saguaro National Park, and the height of that I think was either 8,000 or 8,100. I don't remember which.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I wouldn't have guessed that either.
No. So we
'Cause
did like
that's the place that has the huge cactuses, right? So you're thinking, like, we're in the desert, we're in the
desert,
low
yeah.
desert.
Yeah, it was an interesting it was crazy how much so we started out down low, obviously, and then as we climbed, we passed all the cactuses, and by the end of the day, I think it was a 17-mile day, we ended at the top of the peak. There was snow, ice everywhere, and,
Oh,
there were pine
man.
trees. So we'd completely left the desert, and then the next day we had to come
Yeah.
all the way back down.
Jeez. Like, one extreme to another.
Yes, exactly, and then I ended up taking the next day off. I was supposed to go up Mount Lemon, which was basically a repeat of the day before, and I think both the horses and I were, like, wiped. I'd walked most of Saguaro just because, again, I felt so bad for the horses, so we took 1 day off and then
Yeah.
we
I mean,
went.
that's a big adjustment from living in a crowd to, like,
Yes.
you are traveling and, like, living in nature.
So we took 1 day off and then we went up, Mount Lemon, which was, I think, probably the hardest section, both mentally and physically, of the entire trip.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. I wouldn't have thought Arizona would be the hard part either,
No.
unless you're, like, going through there in the summer, but I'm
Right.
like, you were there in the spring when a lot of times, like, people choose to live there
Yeah, yeah.
during that exact time.
Yeah, yeah, so I think it was the mental aspect. It was one of my first, like, really big days. It was, like, 26 or 28 miles in week 2, and then I got to camp in the dark. My phone had died. I was
Oh my
navigating on
gosh.
my GPS, which I didn't really have, like, my route in my GPS because I was not thinking I'd have to use it, and then there was, like, snow up on top. It was just, like, a very long, long, long day. By the time we
Oh
got
my
to camp, I
gosh.
was like, "I don't know if this was a good idea."
Yeah, I was gonna say, were you second guessing your
Yes.
decision and continuing forward and everything at that point?
Yes, yeah, I think that was, like, the first legitimate, like, kind of regret. Um, and I ended up staying in the camper that night. I got to camp, I was rather discouraged. It was dark, the dog had her collar on, and she has, like, a little light, so she was out in front of me, and I had my headlamp riding into camp.
Oh my gosh. With 4 horses, we have to remember that.
Yes, yeah. So we got to camp. I was, like, kind of trying to hype myself up to set up my tent and do all of that, and then I was like, "No, this is not something I wanna deal with." So, hey, John offered, and he's like, "Do you wanna sleep in the camper tonight?" And I was like, "Yes, please." That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, and then we kept going the next day. Cause what are the options? Like, at that point, we were committed, and that's
Yeah.
the
I mean, I think a lot of people may have bailed at that point,
Yeah.
but you're like, "If this is just the start, what is this gonna be like?"
I think for me, it was just not really an option, I guess, I don't know. In my mind, it was
Yeah.
very much like, we're here, like,
Yeah.
the only way, I guess, is forward. So
Yeah.
so that was kind of the mentality the whole trip.
And it probably made a difference. Like, this wasn't just a spur of the moment decision, like you said, like, this was 4 years in the making. Yeah, I think that, like, dedication and commitment that you put beforehand really probably
Yes.
made a difference in those really tough moments.
Yeah, I think it was the mental both preparation of preparing for this trip as well as, like, not wanting to disappoint myself, I guess, too, because like,
Yeah,
I think that was kind of the repeat factor as well. Because there were several times where I was like, "I don't think I can do this, like, I don't wanna do this anymore." And then it was really
yeah,
came back to the fact of, like, what am I facing? Like, what is this obstacle that's making me feel this way? And then is this, like, obstacle really worth, like, ending the trip? Like, after coming however
yeah,
far, like, is the fact that there's no water, but there'll probably be water in, like, 10 miles or however, like, is that enough to
yeah,
go, like, "I'm done?" And
yeah,
it's kind of, I think, what kept getting me through, like, each point is, like, "Is this enough to make me quit?" And it just never was quite enough for me to say, "Okay, now we're done." So, anyway.
yeah. I mean, what a great mentality though to just be like, "I don't wanna disappoint myself." I'm sure everybody else would have been like, "Oh, bummer," but, like,
Yeah.
the next day it means nothing to them, and it's probably something that you would have just regretted, like, "What if I would have kept going?" And so,
Yeah.
man, what a, like, good philosophy for life to not disappoint ourselves. Like, if we commit to something, let's do it, there's a reason we started this.
Yeah, it was definitely a learned I would say the growth in the first 2 months of the trip was was a very steep steep growth period because it was just learning the mentality of, like, what it was like to not have, like, a surety, I guess, every day, like, that's not something that we're used to, I think, especially in America.
Mm-mm.
Most of the population, there are, people that live that way, but
Right.
it was the, like, will we have food? Will we have water? Most of the time, that was, like, mostly guaranteed. I spent a decent amount of time planning that we would camp somewhere that should have water and food, but there were several times where I'd get to camp and there would be the water was dry or there was no grass or, I only had 40 pounds of alfalfa cubes left, and so that was what they had for the night, and just, like, having to walk into camp, reshift your mental frame of, like, "We're not done yet, we gotta keep going," and then continuing on, looking at your map as you go, like, "Okay, where's my next source of water?"
Oh, yeah.
And you just walk until you get there, that's your option.
Yeah, that is true. It really does make your choices simple.
Yes, yeah, there's very few things very few things to worry about, I guess. There were about, you know, 4-ish things: food, water, how far we're going, and, like, is everybody, like, safe, which simplifies life for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, so anyway, it was the first 2 months, were a lot.
Do you think it being hard at the beginning made it easier later on?
Yeah, I think it kind of set the tone for the trip, and I think that the first 2 months were hard because I was adjusting to the tone of the trip.
Mm.
Of just that it was gonna be kinda relentless, it was gonna be a lot of work. I was expecting my days off to be, like, kind of a relaxing reset day, and in
Sitting
reality.
in a hammock.
Yeah, exactly, and in the reality, like, if you have 4 horses and a dog, your days off are entirely consumed by how do we have to set ourselves up to take care of them for the next, 5 however long days, which, yeah, I quickly realized that my days off were going to be taking care of the animals, and that was one of the things too, is there were a ton of hikers on the Arizona Trail. I
Mm.
kind of was starting with a group of hikers, and I caught up to several that had started before me, and then obviously people hike at different paces, so I had people pass me as well, and one of the comments that they would always say is, like, I would pass them in the middle of the day, and they would be like, "Oh, man, like, you're taking the easy way," or whatever, and I would always kinda laugh because it's like, "Yeah, this is way easier now. Wait till we get to camp, and I'm taking 3 hours to set up and feed
Yeah, having to
the horses and do all this."
having to take care of everybody else except yourself.
And then when, in the morning when we pack up to leave, you're gone in, like, 15 minutes maybe, and I'm gonna be here for 3 hours. It was yeah, again, just adjusting to that, but I saw some really cool country. Arizona is so incredibly rugged. Yeah, Arizona is so rugged, and it was just super cool to be able to ride consecutively through the state. And then, yeah, going through the Grand Canyon was something that I've kind of been looking forward to from the very beginning, and then actually.
Yeah, and how is that, like, difficulty-wise? Because that's pretty intense trails and stuff, isn't it? Like, you're on the side of cliffs and things like that?
Yes, I was, like, genuinely I thought I was probably gonna throw up as I was approaching the edge of the
Oh, man.
it was
I don't know if I coulda done that. Your
Yeah,
videos of it are crazy.
it was, I would say crazier. I mean, obviously crazier in real life.
Yeah,
It almost looked like, I think my brain, like, just, created a barrier of, like, reality versus it looked like a movie set. It looked like it was just a flat, like, background, like, I think my you just I couldn't
mm,
the depth of the Grand Canyon and, like, just how big it was.
mhm,
And so as you're walking up to the edge and this just, I mean, it just drops. Like, there's just this rock and then there's nothing after that. And so we're riding along and obviously the South Rim is open year round and so there's tourists everywhere and people are hiking down. I went down South Kaibab Trail. So people are having to like step up on the high side of the trail and let us pass. And it was maybe, I would say most of the trail was like 6 to maybe 8 feet wide going down,
mm,
and so it was wide enough, but it was still very much like as I was riding, like my toes were barely in the stirrups. I'm kinda like leaning to the high side.
yeah.
It was pretty crazy. You'd go around switchbacks and your horse's head would just like hang off the trail.
Oh my gosh.
So it was pretty crazy. Yeah,
Did it
for me.
bother the horses at all?
Susie, I was riding Susie that day, and I would say, like, the first 2 switchbacks, she was pretty nervous. It was they were, steep enough switchbacks that you'd be coming around the corner and your pack horses were still above you, like, as they were
Yeah.
coming down around the switchback, and so the first few, she was kinda like, "I don't know if this isn't normal, like, this isn't a good." But after we got through the first few, everybody settled in,
Yeah.
and we
That's
had.
incredible that they just adjust like that.
Yes, and at that point, we were about 800 miles in, so they had some serious miles under their belt, and I think that's why we were able to do that because, in fact, I had some, like, permitting issues. I was planning on camping on the North Rim, but it was closed, and so I ended up having to I had a park officer come up, and he's like, "For the person who issued the North Rim permits, it wasn't like the park is closed and they didn't realize that that camping site isn't available when the park is closed." And he's like, "So is there any way that you can go around?" So I kind of looked at him like, "Go
Around the Grand Canyon?
back." I'm like, "Go around? You mean around the Grand Canyon?" And he's like, "Well, yeah." And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
around the Grand Canyon. And so he's like, "Well, like, is there what options could you?" And he's like, "Could you go down and then come back up the South Rim and then go around?" And I was like, "No, I don't have a truck and trailer. Like, I am walking." And I was like, "What we could do is we could just go camp in the basin, go up the North Rim, and then leave the park that same day." And he was like, "Are you sure that's going to be safe?" Because he's like, "A lot of people like think that they're gonna be able to do these trails and then they really struggle." And I think it was just a testament to how in shape the horses were at that point because we stay at Cottonwood Campground. So from there up through the North Rim, I wanna say it was almost like 6,000 feet of elevation gain. And then we had another like 5 or 8 miles, I don't remember exactly which, to get out of the park. So we'd climbed up, all the way up to the North Rim and then we had another, like we had to keep going.
Dang. Yeah,
And
that's a good trek out.
yes, yeah, and the horses were completely fine. Like, we stopped a few times to catch our breath, but for the most part, they were able to just,
Wow.
like, hike out of there, so,
Yeah, that's
yeah, it
awesome.
was it was amazing. It was amazing watching exactly, like, how capable they were, not just mentally, but also, like, physically, so.
Were there any other notable Arizona moments before you headed off into Utah, right? Was next?
Yes. Utah was next. Arizona had a lot of challenges. The cactus was one of the big challenges. I had York. So we left Mount Lemon, dropped down into, I don't remember what that next mountain range was called, but they're fairly low mountains, like 3,000 feet, more hills, I would say, way fields are. And so once we dropped down into that kind of basin, we got into like some serious cholla bushes or trees. I'm not sure exactly what you would us, but my horses did not know what those were, and so we were riding. We were east of Tucson, and York was in the back. Or no, he was packing, so he was second to last. And Friendly was in front of him and he didn't steer very wide around the bush. So then York just went to like cut the corner and go straight through, and he almost went over the top of this cholla bush and just
Oh my gosh.
completely covered, like from nose to tail covered in cholla.
Oh my gosh.
I called them like angry pickles. There were 2 different kinds that we were mainly dealing with. I don't know. I remember what the one kind there's the teddy bear cholla, which are the really, like, fluffy, like, sea urchin-y looking ones,
Mm,
and those are the ones that they call the jumping cholla, and then there was a different kind that looked like pickles, but they had, like, super long spines on them.
just all over, right? Like, they're all covered in them,
Yes, and yeah,
in
and
the
so
spines.
spines, like, they're, like they have a barb on them, so if they get in you, then they stick.
Oh my gosh.
You will just have, like, all of these, like, bundles of, like, cholla arms. Anyway, and so he broke his breakaway, broke the horses behind him, and he just took off at, like, a dead run. And he did, like, 5 or
Oh my
6 hot
gosh.
laps, bucked off his panniers, his canvas, like, all the things came off. And then he finally, like, ran over the hill, and we were able to go find him and get him. He was not very interested in running at that point, but we had the guy that I was riding with a guy at that point for a couple days, and he had a cholla comb, which I had a ton of people tell me I should invest in a cholla comb, and it's just like
Yeah, you're
a
like,
comb, but you get
"Now
it
I know," right?
yeah, you get it in between the barbs and the horse, and then you, like, flick
Mm,
a Leatherman, which worked, but anyway, so we spent about, like, 30 minutes trying to get the cactus off of him, which he didn't appreciate, and then we packed up and kept going, and after that, he's still to this day very paranoid. If you have anything that looks like it's at all pokey,
man, yeah.
the ear goes out and we make a wide turn around it, so I feel like that
Oh,
would
man.
like a christening. If you're gonna ride in Arizona, you have to have at least one encounter with the cholla.
Oh my goch. Yeah. It sounds and looks horrible.
Yes, it is I would s if you're not riding through it, it could be really pretty.
Yeah.
It's very otherworldly for sure. Yeah, anyone that I think has ridden through the desert of Arizona, like, it is brutal, and I would probably not choose to take 4 horses through it ever again.
Really?
And the dog too, she would lay underneath the cholla bushes, because
No.
stayed out there, and then she would get up and she'd just be like her entire side would be coated in cholla,
Oh my gosh.
bite at it to try and get it out, and then she'd get the needles in her mouth, so, anyway, that was all that whole experience was kind of a disaster.
Man, how long was that? Like, how long were you, like, in the cholla where you're dealing with
It was
this?
about a
A week?
yeah, so there
Man.
were there were a couple days that were, like, literally both sides of the trail were, like, huge bushes and you just couldn't help. Every time you would ride through them, some would fall off on you, and then the rest of the time, it was, like, if you went off the trail, then there were bushes that you kinda had to avoid, or sometimes you'd have to kinda, like, keep everybody to one side or the other, but there was, like, 1 week that was just everything was it was thick.
Jeez. Were you exhausted after that? Just the relentlessness of again and again and again?
Yes, yeah, that was a very long week
One
used for us. I think we took 3 days off at the end of that one before we started our next stretch, which that was the 2 days off and 5 days on was how we kind of navigated Arizona and Utah. And then once we got to Wyoming, we started doing 6 days of travel and 1 day off just to kind of speed up the process.
yeah, that's so surprising. I mean, I guess I could see Arizona being brutal, but you would also think Wyoming
Yeah.
and Montana and stuff, you'd be like, "No, I need a break," also because the elevation and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think the thought process was more food availability. I was able to pack less feed once we got to Wyoming, although that did kind of bite me in the backside a couple times for sure. But yeah, Utah was definitely another highlight. I mean, I've never been to any of the states other than I've been to Montana, but I haven't ridden the through the parts that I rode through. So entering Utah was again, you're changing. It feels like you're changing like worlds. You're going to a different planet now.
Yeah, they are very different.
Yeah, and then, like and similar because the Grand Canyon obviously is big rock features, and you get in
Yeah.
northern Arizona, and again, like, it's right on the border of Utah, so but I rode into Utah. I had some people pick me up in from Kanab, so they drove a truck and trailer out to where we were on the trail, drove us back to their place, and then, the horses spent a couple days off with their goats in the backyard. And then they drove us back to the trail that we'd left from. And then we obviously continued into Utah and, we encountered slot canyons, which I didn't actually know. I mean, I guess I knew they were a thing, but I didn't know that we were going to be riding through them. we had to turn around. We had to backtrack 4 miles because we got stuck
Mm,
in a canyon, and then it was like 100 feet from the road, like, I could see it, and there was
oh my
this
gosh.
boulder that had fallen into the base of the slot canyon, and there was like, I could have hiked over it, but there was no way to ride. So I had to backtrack the horses all the way back around, and then we circled out
So
of the slot ca
frustrating.
and then we came into, Tropic, Utah during, Bryce Canyon Mule Days, which was kind of fun,
Oh, wow.
and, took a couple days off there, and then we started climbing up the plateaus. So we went over the Aquarius Plateau first, and then stayed in Torrey, Utah, and then went back over, I don't remember what the next plateau was called, and dropped into Salina. We saw our first rattlesnake and only rattlesnake of the entire trip. Uh,
That's surprising. I would have thought you would have encountered more.
I was expecting to have them, like, crawling in the tent at night and, like, I was expecting just in my mind, I'd had all these, like, all
Yeah.
these whole scenarios with snakes, and we saw one. So, I mean, one rattlesnake. We saw a couple other but yeah, that was, and I think honestly that was because it was such a cold year. Most of my nights out were, like, anywhere from 20 degrees to maybe 35, 40, but most of my nights were around freezing throughout the entire trip. And I think that was just the elevation that I was kind of riding at. It froze on us every single month. I had ice at least once on the upper and then I think it snowed every month except for September.
Oh my goodness.
It was just a really cold year, but it was exactly what we needed because we kept refilling our water table essentially. So as
Yeah. I mean, that's a bright side.
yes, exactly, and that was what I was trying to focus on because it was cold. But I think
Yeah. Were
for
you
the horses, it would be better than to have hot just 'cause it's way more manageable.
yeah. Were you expecting it to be so cold so much of the time? Like
No,
that every night it's cold?
no, in fact, that was one of the things that I was regretting. I had my sleeping bag was, rated for 20 degrees, I believe, which I thought would be,
No.
and it was not. I probably should have had a
Yeah.
50 euro bag. My dog and I ended up I would wake up, usually it was around 2 AM because it was kind of the coldest of the night, and Piglet would be like, her face would be right here, and she'd just be, like, staring at me, like, asking to get the sleeping bag, and she had her own down blanket, but that was not usually good enough, and so I'd open the sleeping bag, and she'd burrow in, and then I'd put her blanket over the top of both of us, and that was how we made it
Yeah.
through summer. Most of
Combine some body heat.
yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so Utah was incredible. I would love to go back, honestly. But that was kind of the challenge of Utah was road riding.
I remember seeing that you were next to roadways a lot.
Yes. And a lot of that was because there was still a lot of snow up on the Wasatch Plateau, which was kind of my plan was to go up and over and then take that plateau quite a ways north. And there was still enough snow up there that the locals were like, I don't think you'd be able to make it through. And so I rode down through the valley, but all
Yeah.
of that was on roads. And then I was able to go up the Wasatch on a highway that I had multiple people tell me that people had died, like, driving. They had their pioneer days, and they were like, "Well, yeah, a couple years ago, somebody got killed in, like, a wagon, with their horses." And so I
Oh,
had,
great.
people I stayed with, basically, they drove in front of me and behind me with flags, which was very
Nice.
and then we got up on the plateau for only, like, 2 days, and we had to drop back down, I think we had about a week of being in the backcountry, and then the rest of the Utah was pretty much on roads, so, it would be I would love to try and ride through Utah and find a way to do it on public land, but most of the public land was, like, east-west, not north-south, so you kinda through highways, so we spent a lot of time, practicing our desensitizing on the width side of highways.
Yeah, and the horses did well, all things considered, with vehicles going by quickly?
Yes, they did fantastic. I just have not enough words for how amazing they were on this trip. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have been able to do it without them, but it was so incredible to just watch them. Like, literally every obstacle that we faced, they were like, "Yeah, okay, we can do this." Which I think also set the tone for, like, me of, like, if you guys can do this and you aren't complaining, like, I'll do it too, and I'll, make sure that you're taken care of through this. But yeah, so we had, like, semi trucks, tarps flapping in the back of vehicles, like the Jake brakes on the semis. People, which I totally understand the heart behind, but people would honk at us because I think they were excited.
You're like, "Thank you."
Yeah, so, yeah, that was always fun. The first couple times
Yeah,
horses kinda, like, would spook, and then they very quickly were like, "Oh, okay, like, this isn't a scary
yeah,
thing." Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, and then managing the dog too, that was a lot of people were very concerned about the dog through Utah, which is understandable. She did really well. She learned a lot of kind of unintended manners on the trip of healing, and then also if she heard a car coming, usually she'd hear it before me, she'd come back and sit down and
Wow.
really trained. It was kind of just as the further that we went, she just learned that, I'd call her back when cars were coming, and so she started just doing it on her own. She also learned how to hitchhike in Utah, because
Yeah.
the asphalt was really hard on her paws, and we tried boots and they were causing blisters. So anyway, so I'd have people just they pull over and be like, "Your dog looks a little sore," and I was like, "Yeah, her feet are a little sore today," and so they'd offer to pick her up and take her to camp that night, and the first couple times I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"You're not gonna bring my dog back, like, you're just gonna take my dog," and every single time, they would drop her off at camp that night, or they'd take her for a couple hours and take her to town and then drop her back off, like, midday, and which
That's incredible, and this was just people driving by that happened to see you?
yep, random
That's
people.
amazing.
There were a couple people that follow me on Instagram that offered to take her, and then I had a couple people that like friends that I knew that would take her for, like, a week or something. But, yeah, most of it was just random people on the side of the road that were like, "You look like you're walking somewhere." It's like, "Yep," and they would just offer to take the dog and drop her off. So and food, there were
Wow.
lots of people that would drop off food at camp, which was through Utah because we were closer to towns, and so,
Mhm.
was super sweet, and it was really cool to just see people kind of, like, come around and help you out on something that you've never met them before, and they don't know you, so,
Yeah, that is really cool.
yeah. Utah was
That's
very
really
cool
neat.
people aspect, and then, yeah, we went into I had a friend join me through, like, northern Utah, and then we went through, like, the corner of southern Wyoming, and then into, like and we were on the highway at that point, and then we went into the mountains in Wyoming, on, like, the very western kind of part of the state. We had a few issues there. I lost my saw. We ended up backtracking about 8 miles that day to try and find it, and I'm gonna guess I lost it somewhere on the highway.
Oh, no.
And
And,
so
like, when you're out there in rugged forests, like, they're not trails like a lot of us are used to where, there's a nice little path, like, there are down trees everywhere.
yes. Yeah, no, that was, ironically, like, as I lost my saw, after that was really
Oh,
I was sawing out a tree almost every day to some extent.
man.
So it was awful timing, but it worked out. I had somebody lend me a saw for a while, and then I ended up getting another one. So and then York bucked me off, I think the next day,
Man.
which was a bummer. I lost my headlamp, I think, and my water
Shoot.
bottle. I lost a couple more things on that event.
Which you would think, like, we've walked thousands of miles by this point. Why are you bucking me off?
Yeah. Yeah, so that was we kind of discovered York has the least amount of riding experience. There were some things that we kind of, like, expedited in order to make this trip, because they were all 3
Mm,
at them. We spent the 4-year-old year getting ready, and then 5 is when we were on this trip, and so I found some holes for sure in my training process.
yeah.
And one of them for York was if he gets ropes underneath his tail, that sends
Really?
yes, absolutely spiraling. So that is what happened is Friendly had
Man.
bumping him with his nose and he got his lead rope underneath York's tail.
Oh my gosh.
Missed my turn. I made a navigation error, so we went to do like a U-turn. And as I turned him around, the rope kind of sucked up underneath his tail. And that
Oh my gosh.
started our 8-second attempt. And I,
Jeez, just like one bad thing after another to
yeah. So then after
lead to
that, we
it.
a little more intentional about rope management and, who if I was riding York, I was pretty intentional about who I put behind him and
Yeah. I never would have thought about that,
no.
even packing.
Yeah, yeah. And for whatever reason, when he was packing, it didn't bother him when another horse would do it then. I think it was just enough factors of being uncomfortable that it was enough to, like, tip him over the edge. Uh,
Yeah.
And that had happened one other time in Arizona, but he took, like, a couple big jumps and then, like, just took off at a dead run, and at the end of the couple jumps, I realized that I was still on top of my horse. I'd lost my reins and was behind I was in the back of the saddle, so I was on the cantle and not in
Oh
the
my goodness.
but I was still on top of my horse, so I kind of as he's dead running through the forest, I kinda climbed back into the seat and grabbed the reins, and I was able to get him stopped.
Oh my gosh.
It was not the first kind of occurrence, but it was the first time it was the only time I got bucked off on the trip, thankfully. But anyway, yeah. So Wyoming had a few kind of rodeo, but it was, I think, early enough in the year that nobody was really out in the mountains yet. It was still kind of a little bit wet and hard to access with like vehicles, off-road vehicles. So we basically had the whole mountain range to ourselves. We spent 10 days without seeing anyone. So it was 10 days of just us out in the mountains, which was
Geez, what was that like? Did you start feeling that after a while, or were you like, this is amazing?
I think at that point, Arizona, there were a lot of moments of like, I need human contact, and I'm not naturally, I don't like being by myself. And so I think that that was part of the hard part of Arizona was kind of learning how to be okay by myself. But by the time we got to Wyoming, and just, I think that it was just a spectacular scenery, I was starting to kind of get used to it. And I didn't like it necessarily, but there was kind of a peace about it.
Mhm.
The only thing is Gracie did colic while we were in one.
Mm.
That was, like, 2 days later, so lost the thaw, York bucked me off, about 2 2 days later, Gracie colicked.
Is this the next worst part of the trip?
Yeah, yeah, Friendly had stuck his leg through a cattle guard in Arizona, like, as we were not in Arizona, in Utah, as we were coming into Wyoming. So I was giving him, like, antibiotics and pain medication, then Gracie colicked while I was still doing all that, so it was definitely it was a rough couple weeks. She was fine, obviously. The temperature dropped to about 17 degrees from being, like, fairly warm during the day. And there wasn't a lot of grass there. We were too high. I think we were at like 8,500 feet. And the grass was kind of around 7,500 at that point in the year. And so there just wasn't a lot of food. The temperature dropped a ton. And then I wasn't packing alfalfa at that point. I was packing grain. And so I gave them what little grain I had left. And I just think that it was enough to kind of cause like a little GI upset. But we were walking all that next day, and she wasn't super uncomfortable. Then towards the end of the day, she started to try and lie down a couple times. Uh,
Mm.
and thankfully, we got to this gorgeous meadow right along a river, and so we took 2 days off there, and then continued on. And then in Jackson, we took 10 days off. So we made it. We made it there by I think the 1st of July, and then we stayed there until I think it was the 13th, 12th or 13th, because we had to be in Yellowstone by the 16th. Uh, we rode through Teton National Park, which was mind-blowing.
I bet.
I think there were 2 parts of the trip that, like, overlived the hype, and one of them was the Grand Canyon, and the other one was the Tetons. Yeah, it was just kind of one of those, like, you just can't really comprehend. There was still snow on the top, and so it was just absolutely stunning. And we didn't really get to ride through we were on the highway through the park to get to we were going through Teton Wilderness, so we were just trying to get to the wilderness area, but still, it was pretty incredible. And then rode through Teton Wilderness to get to Yellowstone. I camped out for 2 days on the south border of Yellowstone with probably the worst biting flies of the entire trip. I was walking around with a blanket over my head because they'd
Oh
fall
my gosh.
in these swarms, and I went through a couple cans of bug spray, and they just, like, wouldn't go away.
Oh my gosh.
And so
Like,
then
how
we
many ways can you find to torture yourself?
Yeah, I know. It was just a new it was just something, like, you'd get through the one miserable thing, and then you'd find a new one to replace it, so
Right, and some you didn't even anticipate, right? You're like, "The rattlesnakes were fine, but the biting flies."
yeah, and the biting flies, I think, honestly, they were awful, and the horses, obviously, it was driving them crazy because they can't get away from them. And I think I had, like, 3 cans of human bug spray, and I'd gone through all of my horse bug spray that I had in those 2 days because 'cause I'd just done a resupply, and so I started
Oh,
using
man.
human spray on them as well. Anyway, it was definitely not quite a restful 2 days off, but
Yeah. You guys were probably all ready to get out of there. You're like, "All
We're
right,
we were
we're
ready
done."
to go through Yellowstone. And yeah, so then we got to ride to Yellowstone, which was super cool. I had called like a week ahead of time to get my permits, and so we ended up having to get through the park in 3 days, hoping to spend a little bit more time, but it was kind of a rushed, gotta get through.
That's just the amount of time that they would give you, was just the 3
So
days?
in the backcountry in national parks, you have to have stock permits. And Yellowstone does a really good job of managing their like each stock site has pasture that you graze. So they have like grazing hours, and obviously like just their different registration or reservations kind of line up. So
Mhm.
because I'd only given them a week ahead of time, they only had a few stock sites available, and so I had to go far enough in between. So we had like a 26-mile day, I think like a 27.5 or 28-mile day, and then we had like a 24-mile day. So all the days were pretty full to get through the park
Yeah,
fast.
that seems long.
Yeah. We did a lot more days over. I found kind of 18 miles really was the sweet spot, which I talked to Ben Masters ahead of time who did the unbranded ride, and
Mhm.
we kind of planned a lot of that. And he told me, he's like, 18 miles is gonna be like that's gonna be how far you wanna go in a day. It's like it's you're not gonna walk the weight off your horses.
So 27 miles is like a pretty heavy day.
Yes. Yeah, and I unfortunately, most of my days ended up being over 20. I had a
Wow.
few days I slowed down quite a bit in Wyoming. I did a lot of, like 15 to 18-mile days just because it was really pretty and I was trying to, like, enjoy the process and not just rush through. But I think overall, throughout the whole trip, the amount of days over 20 miles was pretty heavy, and I ended up doing way more miles. And my longest day was 31 miles, and that was in Utah.
Wow.
And then I had several days that ended up being about 30 miles again, accidentally, because most of the time it's because we'd get to camp, no water, so you gotta keep going. And then there were a couple navigation errors that caused,
Mm,
I'd have to turn around and go back.
yeah. Rocks where they weren't listed.
Yes, yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff. Or, trails that aren't marked, and so you miss your turn and you have to either
Yeah.
country it to find it again or, um yeah, so, anyway, so then we got in Yellowstone is when York got kicked by Gracie,
Mm,
and he at the time, I wasn't sure what happened other than I heard her kick him, and then he was, like, slightly lame the next day, but not really too bad, so we walked out of Yellowstone that day, and then by the next day, it was pretty obvious that he was pretty lame, he wasn't feeling very good. So, at that point, I started text I think I texted my vet, and I was like, "This is a situation," um and she's like, whether it's a splint or like a splint bone fracture, or if there's a tendon that's torn, she's like, any of these scenarios, you're gonna want to get him off trail. And so I started kind of as I was riding down the trail texting. Like I texted my dad and a friend in my hometown, and then a gal that lives in Montana who ended up joining me for a week and kind of trying to come up with a plan. And we were able to kind of come up with a plan that my dad would drive 7 hours to come get York. The original plan was to ride through to the Madison River Valley, but I realized that was going to be too far and I didn't want him to be on trail any more days than he had to. So we ended up stopping at a highway. My dad drove 7 hours, picked him up. I drove him to my friend's house in Montana. The hope was he would be able to come back after a couple weeks off. And then she brought him to the vet there, and it was pretty obvious that he wasn't going to be able to. We had a vet appointment like a week apart, and he was still lame, and so at that point we were like, he's probably not going to be able to come back to the trail on the trip. And so he stayed at my friend's house in Montana for almost a month, I think, and then I had a different friend come pick him up and bring him back to my hometown, which was a bummer to lose him. And then it was very obviously felt throughout the crew. um
really?
yeah, it was. I think there was a certain security in 4, and so then you take one of those away, so there was just a little bit of, like, kind of readjusting to the new normal of the herd dynamics. York is also kind of our top. He was the boss, and so losing that, bring out the new dynamic there as well.
Mhm.
And then also not being able to rotate pack horses. At that point, I realized how incredibly helpful it was to have the 4 horses with 1 not working, because
Mhm.
basically from that point on, the horses started losing weight.
Really?
Yeah, prior to that
So that made a huge difference.
it did, yeah. Prior to that, they'd been holding their weight really well, and I think just being able to not have to carry anything for that one day was enough to kind of keep that momentum going, and so, yeah, once he left and Gracie had to pack full time, everybody had to work full time, the horses kinda started to slowly lose weight. Friendly did not. I think he left and came back the exact same weight.
Really? He was made for the trails.
He really won the MVP of the entire trip. I didn't say that. He did roll off a cliff in Arizona. Friendly had kind of a
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. That was Friendly that went off the cliff?
Yes, yeah, Friendly had a rough summer.
Oh, man.
We were in the Superstition Wilderness, or no, the Four Peaks Wilderness, and the trails, I would not say were intended for equine travel. You can for sure, but, they were super narrow and, like, just kind of like shale, loose rock with huge step ups that we were having to go up and up and up. And it was towards the end of the day on that one, and he
Oh
caught
my
his
gosh.
toe on a step up and just had the momentum of the packs kind of, so he's down on his knees on this big step up that's about my thigh height, and then he went to kind of jump to get up to get his feet back under him, and he leaned to the right, and there just was no trail there.
Oh, man.
Rolled down the cliff, rolled 4 or 5 times, came to a stop, and I, like, was starting to go down to him, and then he tried getting up, and that pulled him back over. You roll another 4 or 5 times. So he ended up
Oh
rolling
my gosh.
60 feet off the trail, um, and I was, like, fairly he looked okay the first few rolls. The 3rd time that he started rolling, like, I had to turn around, and I was pretty much sure that I was gonna have to put him down. Like, I was gonna have to
Man.
like, there was just no way that he wasn't gonna break his neck or a leg or something.
Mhm.
So I tied the horses up kind of around the corner, and then I worked my way down to him, and I got down there, he disappeared through, like, this kinda tree cluster. It was, like, a mostly bald, like, shale cliff, and then there was, like, this little tree cluster that he'd rolled through, which I think slowed him down enough to get him stopped. Um, got down there, and he's just kinda sitting there, like, I don't know what that I didn't like it. And I
Oh,
got all his stuff off, and he kinda stood up and, like, took a second and whinnies to his buddies who were up above him on the trail, and so I slipped the lead rope over his neck, and he just picked his way up that little, like,
wow.
side and
He's like,
decided
"I'm fine.
yeah,
Let's go."
he was fine. So, I mean, he
That's
had
amazing.
cut lip and a couple scratches, but he was
Oh
fine.
my
So
gosh.
all 160 pounds of gear up that hill, which took me a couple hours, and then I ended up
Oh my
having
gosh.
through hikers come toward like, I was about 50 feet from the top, and they ended up helping me finish the finish the hike.
Oh, that's so
So,
amazing.
yeah, anyway, so Friendly had a rough summer, but he definitely weirdly enough, he handled it the best out of everybody.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so anyway, he definitely won the MVP award of the summer. Anyway, so we were in Montana at that point, which was all kind of smooth sailing. I felt like we ended up cutting off a big chunk of the Continental Divide. I wanted to try and follow it all the way through Montana, and we ended up having to kind of shortcut it because I was concerned it was gonna snow basically super early in the season based on how the summer had been going.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to make it to the border in Glacier, and I wasn't sure if that was gonna be possible with if it snowed early, which I thought it was going to. So anyway, we cut off about, like, 300 miles worth of trail, and rode kind of straight north, got back onto the Continental Divide. Around Helena, the trail was incredibly, like, just trees down everywhere, so I had a few breakdowns about having to thaw out trees. There were some tears shed about that for sure. I was just tired of cutting out trees. I didn't want to do it
Oh,
any
I bet. Yeah.
We got caught in a thunderstorm, and I was having to saw out, like, every 10 feet, there was another tree down.
Oh my gosh.
I could die up here. If there's a fire that starts, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it happens, and then temperature dropped way down, and so that was a long day for sure, but, anyway, but once we got kind of past a little bit further north from Helena, it really kind of just began to I don't know, I at that point, I felt like I could just keep going.
You figured it out. You're like,
There was just a piece of, like, I know what we need to do, and we'd found a really good rhythm, and then we started to get up kind of my dad joined me for a week in the Bob Marshall, which was super fun. He's not a horse guy, so he had been, like, practicing at home. Uh,
"Aw."
to join me on this stretch, which was super fun. We ended up doing some fly fishing, and there was a fire that started, which made us do a 28-mile day, which was not planned. So my dad, who rides maybe once a year, if that, had to do 28 miles in a day.
Yeah, that's intense for even people that ride around their homes.
Yeah. Yeah. And he and the horse that he was riding is my old 4-H horse. They both did really, really well.
Cool.
But yeah, at that point, I think I was starting to be like, once he left, I was starting to be like, okay, I think that the daily packing up the tent, setting up the pen, taking it all down the next morning was starting to kind of get old. And so I think
Mm,
to be ready to be like, I think I'm getting ready to be done at this point.
yeah.
So then we rode. I couldn't get the permits figured out to ride through Glacier, but I rode the border trail on the south end of the park, over West Glacier, took the highway through Glacier to a road that parallels basically Glacier National Park. And then I rode all the way up to the border on that road. Hit the border. It was kind of an understated, it didn't feel like
Yeah.
much of an accomplishment.
Right.
I think in my mind, I was working myself up to the fact that I wanted to ride home. Since the beginning of the trip, I think that was always what I kind of secretly wanted to do. But I just wasn't sure if we were going to make it to the border. And so I didn't want to set my sights too high.
Hmm.
So I got to the border. It was cool.
You're like, here's the border. All right, we're done.
That is exactly how it felt. I think I was expecting it to be this big, woo thing. And it was kind of like, okay, cool. We made it.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, I kind of decided my parents and my aunt and a couple other people came up to, greet us at the border and, have a
Yeah.
little party.
Celebrate a little bit. That's a
Yeah.
big accomplishment, even though it's just the border.
Yeah. And then at that point, my parents were like, do you want us to bring the trailer? And, take you and the horses home. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to try and ride home. So we had another 2.5 weeks at that point, another 280 miles. And again, I think the week before I got home, one of the hardest days of the whole trip, partially because I think mentally I was like, I am so close and I'm still dealing
Yeah.
with the same issues that I was back in Arizona. We had a day where it was supposed to be like a 22-mile day, like a fairly low mileage day. And we got to camp and it looked like this beautiful meadow on the map and it turned out to be a bog. So it was deep
Jeez.
mud. There was no
Oh
water,
my gosh.
and then the grass was this super thick reed grass. So I drug Susie and the two Mustangs down further down. We hit a Forest Service road, and I rode down that hoping that there would be water somewhere. Couldn't find any water. And so then I was like, well, do we go up and over this next mountain range, or do we backtrack to the last point we saw water? So we ended up doing about 30 miles that day. Again, thunderstorm, but not enough water to accumulate anywhere.
Water everywhere except where you need it.
Exactly. And so at that point, I was like, I didn't have cell service, but I think I texted my dad. I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh,
And the next day, obviously, I'm like, my only option is to keep going. And as soon as I got in cell service, he's like, you almost quit, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, that was almost enough to make me
if I could have, I would have.
yeah, yeah, and that really is, and I think it was just enough of a deterrent for me that having somebody drive out to, however many hours to come pick us up was enough for me to say, this just isn't an option yet. I have to
Yeah.
this point, or I kept setting these little achievable goals for myself, and it's like, if we can make it here, then maybe we can do this. And it was just enough to kind of keep dangling the carrot, so to speak, of just a little bit further and then we'll be fine. That next day, Susie started to look a little bit lame. And so obviously the next day after that, she was very lame. I don't know if she had twisted her ankle, something had happened. Her shoes, her feet were a little bit uneven at that point, and so we still don't really know what happened. Lame enough to where we walked about 2 miles on the side of the road, stopped, and I was like, she cannot go any further. Called my friend who came from my hometown. It was about a 3-hour drive. She came and picked up Susie. offered to take the rest of us home, and I struggled with that. I think that was
Yeah, I bet.
losing 2 horses felt, I think, the most failure of the whole trip, and I just was so didn't want the trip to become like this death march of like my ego and like my
Yeah.
stubbornness is more important than my horses, and I was trying to be sensitive to the fact that like my horses are way more important than this trip. Like I didn't want to risk like a long-term injury, but at the same time we were 5 days from home.
Yeah, so hard.
Such a hard decision, and I sat on the road for, like, 3 hours waiting for my friend, so I had plenty of time to think about it, and I pared all of my gear down, so, I had the 2 pack horses, obviously, so I was just gonna have a riding horse and a pack horse. So while I was sitting on the side of the road, I took all my gear, and I said, like, "What do I actually need?" I got everything down to about, like, 40 pounds of gear, or no, it was, like, 30 pounds of gear total. So I was able to have my pack horse just carrying about 100 pounds because the boxes are 30 each. And yeah, anyway, my friend came and I was like, no, I think we're gonna keep trying. Like I can always bail later if I have to. Um, and yeah, I ended up being able to make it home and um it was pretty surreal to ride through places that I've been riding my whole life, but knowing that we'd walked there from Mexico was wild.
Yeah, it is wild.
Riding, like, through town especially, and then, over the lake, and anyway, it was very, very special riding down my road, having the other horses, like, come and greet us, and
Yeah.
I think that was really the whole trip, that's what I'd been looking forward to, and I'd kind of in my mind, I'd played that moment a couple times, and so, yeah, anyway, it was super special, and
So
yeah,
incredible.
home, and all of a sudden, I had no purpose anymore.
Yeah, you're like, "What do I do when I wake up tomorrow?"
Yeah, exactly. And the horses had like 3 solid weeks of nothing. I had my vet come out. We did kind of like a post-ride assessment. They all gained weight back beautifully. They all look
Good.
York
They're
had
all doing good.
yes, yeah, York has a couple like shin splints, that we're gonna
Mhm.
probably X-ray in the spring just to make sure that there's nothing else going on, but he's sound, and then Susie has kind of a bump on her ankle. I had the vet see her the next day after my friend took her to the vet, and she was 100% sound. So she was only lame for, like, 1 day,
Really?
and they couldn't figure out what had happened that she would be so like, she looks like she was putting on an Oscar-winning performance for, like, she was about to fall over dead. And then she got home,
Oh, man.
sat there for a night, and then the next morning, she was 100% sound. And so the joke just became that because my friend that picked her up was she also had York, and so the joke became that York had sent her, like, a pigeon or something and said, like, "Hey,
Yeah.
they have
It's
food.
better here.
Don't have to walk anymore, so maybe fake an injury and they'll bring you here."
Yeah.
Anyway, they had a little reunion before everybody else, and she's been sound ever since. So we're also gonna
Oh, good.
and friendly. My vet said basically like just give them the rest of the year off, let their muscles like take a break and kind of recover. She has like an interesting composition as a horse, like the way she's put together. And so I'm doing light work with her basically because she just has kind of low muscling in her back and her hindquarters, which she's always kind of been put together that way. But my vet's like it would probably benefit her to just keep doing some light work. But yeah, the other 3 get the rest of the year and into next spring off. And honestly, Grace
Yeah.
probably if I ride her, it'll be like once a week. And I took her hunting and but yeah, no, they're all enjoying some very well earned time off, and we'll do
Yeah.
another vet check and follow up in the spring, probably X-ray everything and make sure there's no long lasting issues. But they all look really good.
Yeah. That's good. So you met your goal. That was definitely one of them, which I think is super admirable
Yes.
to make
Yeah.
sure that they were all good.
Yes.
Yeah. So what were some of like when some of these things happen, like friendly rolling down the cliff and, you know, raining on you, like all these emotions and stress, like Gracie colicking. How did you handle that and like get through that? Because that's intense watching a horse, go down a hill that you think you probably just lost him.
Yeah. I think I've always had a hard time with emotion, I guess. I I don't like to show emotion, I don't like to feel emotion, I'm very much, like, kind of strong, you have to
Yeah.
hold together.
Yeah.
And the career that I'm in, that's it kind of pays well to be able to kind of keep your emotion at least a little bit hidden, and then compartmentalize it, especially in the ICU where I am. You see a lot of death, and so there's like I said, there's some value to being able to tuck things aside.
Yeah.
But kind of what I realized on this trip is experiencing the emotion in the moment, so that you don't have to deal with it later. Because that's
Yeah.
you're gonna feel it one way or other, whether you're feeling it
Yeah.
or you have to deal with it tomorrow, 10 years down the road, whatever it is, you're gonna feel it at some point. So I think the biggest thing on the trip is just learning to literally walk like minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. I had to take everything in such small bites to make the whole thing doable
Yeah.
that
Makes
there's
sense
just
because
really
it's huge.
no putting off. I'm upset, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm tired, like, let all that run through. Have a little, you know, have moments. There were lots of moments.
Yeah. Have some pity parties.
Yes,
Well-deserved ones.
yes. And that was really what I realized is, like, I really liked wallowing in that, and it was hard to let go sometimes. Like, I'm miserable, and I
Yeah.
sit here in the misery,
Yeah.
and then at some point, like, it would hit me of, like, "What am I doing?" Like, this is
Yeah.
it feels good, I guess, in the moment to kind of just sit in that, like, I'm not happy and I don't feel good and I'm kind of miserable, but you can't stay there. And
Yeah.
if you stay there, you're not going to make any progress. And for me, it was such a physical representation of that. Is like, if I just sit here and like wallow in how miserable I am, I'm not going to make it to my goal, which for me was just
Yeah.
the day. Like, I just have to make it to the end of this day. And sometimes I would just not be I'd just be miserable all day, and I'd make it to camp, and I'd set up camp miserable, and then I'd go to bed, and I'd wake up, and it was like, "Okay, like, this is a fresh start, new day." I don't think I carried any into the next day. Most of the time, it stayed in the previous day.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
and
good.
sometimes it was just, like, 10 minutes or an hour of, like, "This sucks." But I think that was one of the most important lessons that I kind of learned is, like, feel the emotion, sit in the moment, and then you just have to move on and say, "This is what it is. I felt it. I did it. Keep going."
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, there
Yeah.
were things, and I think the worst one was just helplessness, which for both Friendly and Gracie, that was kind of that emotion that I really had a hard time moving on from, until obviously
Yeah.
the situation was resolved. Being the only one out there and being completely reliant, like, having 5 souls reliant on me with no one for me to rely on, and I think that's
Yeah.
that's where my faith kind of came in, is like, I needed somebody to rely on, and so for me, that was God, and I was able to kind of pray through those moments and be like, "I need help in this moment and give me something to kind of draw on and give me strength and to move through this." And so there was a lot of prayer going on throughout the trip and,
Yeah.
a lot of asking for, whether it was strength to continue or water, whatever, these little needs throughout the day. But yeah, and then also just learning that your limit is kind of what you said. Like, because again, I think that being in a situation where you are reliant on yourself and for me, God, but you hit all these walls and your brain is what's telling you like you can't do this anymore. And learning to just say, like, again, feel the emotion, sit in the moment for a minute, and then just say, okay, like, keep going. Because I think when you give up mentally, when you decide that you can't do something anymore, you've just set your limit. And that's you will not be able to push past that because you've just said I can't. And so being able to go through all of these really hard situations and just say, again, for me it was kind of teasing the carrot on the stick of like, you just do this one more thing and then you'll be okay. And then you just do this
Yeah.
and then so I just had to break it down into little steps, but yeah, definitely realizing like your limits are what you set, and obviously there are hard and fast limits in life, but I think mentally we can push ourselves so much further than we think that we're capable.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great lesson for life. And like, really, you've done this huge, incredible thing, but it really was like you continuing to go forward in those moments that were really hard and like just doing the next smallest thing to be like, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. That
Yeah.
like got you, thousands of miles across the country on horseback.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that really, and that honestly, that kind of reflects how I feel about the whole trip. is just it doesn't feel like this huge accomplishment to me, even though, like, logically, I know that it is.
Yeah.
Feel of it is just that we did, like, basically 1 ride at a time, and we just did that all summer. Like like,
Yeah.
we just did these little rides, and then these little rides
Yeah.
added up. So they were the little wins just all summer long, and that's it's kind of how the whole trip feels. It's just it was just one little win after another.
Yeah. That's really cool. Were there times where you felt like, I don't know what to do next, or like, I'm done, I can't keep doing this, where it's like then something happened that just made it so you could go forward, whether that was like a prayer, or like you found water just when you needed to, or whatever that might have been?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I it was there was probably at least once a week where I would, like, text my parents and be like, "I don't wanna do this anymore. I'm not having fun. I'm not having fun," because it was my phrase of, like, "This is not something I'm enjoying." And it was usually in relation to there was whether it was terrain, or water or weather, like, usually it wasn't everything at once. It was, like, one miserable thing, which made it.
Mhm.
But, yes, I would say at least once a week. There was a moment like that, and it was always resolved by, like, a little prayer of, like, whether it was yeah, we got to camp, there was no water, like, "Please let us find water tonight." And so you're looking at your map. There's one very specific, like, distinct moment in Arizona. Every single hole that we'd gone to, like, they have these big, like, ponds, dirt ponds, essentially, that are like cattle tanks.
Mhm.
And every single one of them had been dry. I think for, like, the last half of the day, and then we got to camp, and I was like, "There's no way there's gonna be water here because every single tank has been dry." And sure enough, we get there, there's no water. So I think I was able to call my dad at that point, and I'm looking at my map, and I'm like, "Can you look at, on your side of things and see if you see something that could be water?" And so both of us are looking. He finds, like, this black square in the middle of this map. It's, like, 3 miles to the east. It's northeast, so it's kind of in the right direction, but it was still, like, out of my way.
Mhm.
That if I'd gone that far, it would've made any other water source a little bit more inconvenient, and I was like, "Okay," like, a black square is obviously something man-made, and it's an abnormal shape for, nature, and it could be just like a mining site, it could be tons of things, but just kind of on the faith that it was something, we went, like, these 3 miles kind of northeast, and we got there, and it was a black tarp with tires all over it, and it was a water collection site.
Wow.
And so all this huge black tarp that they lay out, and that's kind of one of the systems that they used in Arizona to collect water, and it all funnels down into this, like, big cistern, and then there were cattle there as well. So there were panels, that I was able to put the horses in. There was some grass in there because the cows weren't able to get to it, and then there was water there, and that was I think that's one of the most, like, kind of distinct, like, examples, but
Mhm.
that was almost a daily occurrence, whether it was, yeah, asking for water, like, "Can please give the horses enough energy to get up this, like, last little cliff," protection, colic. There were so many things that were just, like, a daily, like, again, just one little ask, and God showed up every single time, and every single time, fine. We never went without water at the end of the day. Sometimes it was all day, but we never went without water overnight. We always had food for the horses in some capacity. I never went without food or water, and obviously we had a few minor injuries, but nobody got, like, majorly injured on the trip, and we didn't see any
Yeah.
bears. I didn't see a bear, wolf, yeah, no large predators, mountain lions, and I saw one snake. So I
Wow.
definitely watching out over us on this trip, and it was about as good as I think it could have been. Obviously, I would have preferred to not have to send 2 horses home,
Yeah.
but even then, like, the fact that they're sound and they're healthy now is huge, huge blessing, so
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty incredible that, considering everything that they went through, that they're doing good.
yes,
It's
yeah,
amazing. And I love what you said too, because it's like, you were relying on God, but I'm like, it didn't make it easy. Like, it was still really hard. Like, watching your videos, I was just like, geez, that looks miserable in some of them. And then other ones are like, that looks amazing. But, so yeah, I think that's a good lesson. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy, but, sometimes just when we need help or messages or guidance, that's when it really shows up a lot of times.
yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, that is the perfect point to take away is honestly, I think it's almost I think it's almost harder if you're putting yourself on obviously, I put myself in those situations. It's going to be really, really hard, but it is doable.
Yeah. How was it doing it alone? Because I know when we talked last time, you kind of said that wasn't really what you were planning on. You just couldn't find someone else who can, take 6 months off life and go horseback ride across the country. Like to me, seems like there would be some kind of terrifying moments doing that alone. How was it for you?
Like I said, the first 2 months were really rough. I think I had the most help and support in Arizona, and so I think that helped kind of, like, ease me into it, but there were a lot of, like I wouldn't go so far as to say, like, periods of depression, but almost to that, like, just sheer loneliness.
Yeah.
To the point that it felt, like, oppressive loneliness. I don't really know how else to say that. And, like, the dogs and the horses were helpful, a dog and horses, but it still wasn't, like during the day, it was fine, it wouldn't really bother me, but towards the end of the day, like, as I'm setting up camp or if there was, like, dead time at all of, like, no tasks to do,
Yeah.
it would just kind of become this, like, super, like, expressive, like, I just want someone to talk to.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And I think just taking that and again, learning to feel that emotion, and it is what it is. There's nothing that can solve this. I had texting ability on my Garmin, and so it was I still had some kind of contact. I was able to text people, but it almost made it worse because the Garmin has like a delay. Um, of
Yeah.
be texting someone and then, like, obviously they're getting it in normal speed, and so they would reply and you're still trying to reply to, like, 2 or 3, comments ago,
Mhm.
and so it was almost more isolating because I could talk to people, but it was like the just this, like, disconnect and delay, which was kind of how it felt too, is like I have people, but it's, like, just far enough away to not quite feel,
Yeah.
but
Did it make a big difference when, like, your dad or friends were able to come out and spend some time on the trail with you?
yes. I and it almost made it harder on the other end too of, like, when they would
Yeah. Like a withdraw, you're back alone again.
yeah, now I'm back to doing this by myself, and a lot of it was just, like it wasn't even I didn't it was just having somebody to do things with, like, having the camaraderie of, like, "You take down the tent, I will do literally everything else," but, like, having just that one, like, task of, like, help, feeling like I was having help
Yeah.
to make it feel, like, so much more fun, and then the friend that joined me in Montana, she and I hit a ton of downed trees and, like, we spent almost an entire day just sawing out trail,
Oh, man.
and it was fun because we were doing it together, and then the next week
Yeah.
after she'd left, I was doing that exact same thing by myself, and I was like, "This is not fun."
It's not fun anymore. Man, that would be hard.
Buddy back. So yeah, being alone was one of, I think, the hardest kind of aspects of the trip. Just learning to, yeah, again, just feel the moment, accept it, take little bites, move on. And I don't really know other than other than that method, I don't know how else I've really managed it.
Yeah.
It really is something that I dislike. I really dislike being alone, and I would still say up to this point, like, it didn't fix me, like, it didn't cure my ability to be alone. I mean, I definitely am better at it now for sure,
Mhm.
but I still would rather be around someone else. But I do think it gave me kind of a piece of, like again, it did help me realize what I'm capable of. I don't need anyone else technically to be able to
Yeah.
I did.
But it's really nice to have people there.
But it is really nice to have people there, and I would rather function that way than doing everything by myself, which also was
Yeah.
a lesson for me to learn because I can be a little too independent sometimes.
Yeah.
The thing that I really do appreciate and need other people was also a good lesson.
Yeah. What were, like, your biggest like, your lowest moment and then, like, the highest where it's just like, "This is amazing. I'm so glad I did this."
Yeah. There were lots of lows. I think
Yeah.
off a cliff was a low. That point in Montana where I was 5 days from home, and I'd sent Susie home, and I was ready to just yeah, I was ready to quit at that point. That was definitely a low. Gracie colicking. It was really those feelings of, like, helplessness
Yeah.
and just being completely isolated and out by
Yeah.
those were really hard. Mount Lemon was most definitely probably one of the lowest lows. of getting to camp in the dark and my phone dying right before it got dark and
Mm,
navigate and basically just follow a road without really knowing where it went, trusting that it was gonna take me to where I needed to go. Trying to memorize right before my phone died, trying to memorize how many turns I took and which ways they went.
jeez.
Anyway, and those were yeah, there were lots of those, but
Lots and lots of hard moments.
lots of really hard moments. The Grand Canyon, riding down into the basin, I've never been to the Grand Canyon, and I didn't know what the basin looked like, but it's almost like
Same.
a tropical, like, other little world. It was, like, such a cool little microclimate of like, there was a creek running through it, and it was just this gorgeous, lush green, beautiful it felt like Journey to the Center of the Earth. Like, you'd ridden through all this rough, harsh rock, and then you get down to this kind of, like, little, tropical paradise down in the basin.
Yeah.
And we cowboy camped that was the first night that I cowboy camped, so I slept under the stars,
Oh, nice.
which was super cool. There was a
Yeah.
creek
A
Montana.
good break after Arizona.
Yes, yeah. Wyoming, just riding out in a mountain range with no one else hundreds of miles around you and just feeling like you're it was a very different version of being alone. It was almost like kind of a blissful freeing.
Mhm.
Just the most wild country and being able to just be out there and knowing you're the only person for miles and miles. It was yeah, it was a super cool, I don't even really know how else to explain it, but
Yeah.
there was another moment like that in Montana where we were riding just all of these ridges all day, so it literally felt like we were on top of the world, and yeah, again, it was like this, like, elation of, like, this is, like, amazing. And, yeah, having no one else be out there other than you and the horses, and then, honestly, spending that much time with my horses was another it's something that I've always wanted, and I think it's something that not many people really have gotten to experience in our modern age.
Right.
There was a different relationship that we've kind of formed. Even it's not quite the same now that we're back, but there's remnants of like kind of that bond that we created. Friendly would follow me. I'd let him out and he'd just follow me around camp. He's
Mm.
like kind of a puppy dog. Just
Yeah.
he just wants to be where you are and now like even if I'm feeding them grain or something that's like a very strong draw, if I go out there he would rather follow me around and kind of just be with me. And then Susie was kind of before the trip she didn't really want you to touch her. She kind of just like very business minded, very serious horse, and she throughout the trip kind of became more and more like attached, I guess.
Mhm.
And she used to, like, in the middle of the trail, she'd just turn around and, like, leave you if you, like, tried to ground her, whatever, or she'd, like, turn around and try and go back to the trailer, and throughout the trip, she kind of became more and more like, if you're here and, like, if you're walking somewhere, like, she'll follow you, and, so just spending that much time with my horses was a super special
Yeah. It's neat.
experience as well, so yeah, there were lots of really good moments too. I don't know if I ever thought while I was on the trip, like, "This is fun." I don't know if that thought necessarily went through my mind,
Yeah.
but it was there were little, like, glimpses and moments of, like, "This is amazing." So,
Yeah. So do you miss it now that you're back? Is it something you wanna do again, you think?
yeah, I was really hoping and I was very convinced that I would never want to do something like this ever again.
You were hoping. You're
I
like, "I
was
know what it all entails."
Yeah, and then the further that I got to the end, the more I realized that I was really I mean, there were little things that I was tired of, like I said, packing up camp every day was I was ready to be done with that for a while.
Yeah.
But yes, I miss it, and I would love if the opportunity ever presented itself, like, if the time in life was right, I would love to do another one.
Yeah.
I'm a little hesitant, like, I feel like I have some, like, I have to be an adult for at least a
Yeah.
couple so I'm a little
No
hesitant.
commitments at the moment,
Yeah,
but
as far
not
as, like
ruling it out either.
yeah, but if something were to, come across, fall in my lap and, feel like it was something that I should do, I would love to do it.
Yeah. Was it hard for your parents, do you think? Them knowing you're out there in the
Yeah.
middle of the wilderness
Yes.
alone with 4 horses and a dog? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. My dad, I think specifically, had a harder time than my mom. My mom is very good at being, like, present
Really?
in the moment, but as soon as I would
Mhm.
text them saying, like, there's no water at camp or, like, I would
Oh,
say,
man.
like, there's a thunderstorm that's coming in, like, I think that that kicked off, like, this cascade of, like, she actually is out in the middle of nowhere with nothing.
Yeah.
So,
It's
yes, I think
crazy.
even though I am an adult and, all the things, I guess you're never done being a parent, and I did
No.
probably add some gray hairs to their collection, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they were my, like they were my cheerleading team back home. They were my support
Yeah.
for sure. Not only sending me my resupplies but yeah, they were very, very helpful just giving me like sometimes that would be like the word of encouragement that I needed is like they'd just text me like, like you are capable, you can do this, you've done this before. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So neat because obviously it probably wasn't easy for them, but also still your biggest supporters, even though it was
Yes.
probably hard to watch from a distance, knowing like they
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to help you if they needed
Yeah.
to. Yeah. And so what are you up to now? And I know you kind of mentioned on Instagram, like what is next? Any thoughts on that or?
Yeah, I think that's just kind of a daily question. I'm gonna let myself sit in that for a while. I don't feel like I
Yeah.
need to. I don't want to just shove something back in the place of this trip, right? Like I've been planning it for 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't want to just be so desperate to have something that I will just grasp at anything. So I'm okay with sitting in that kind of like place of I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I did start my job back at the hospital. So I'm working in the ICU again, and that's been a bit of an adjustment just going from like being on the trail to being back in like the chaos and the noise and these like
Yeah, I bet.
different life and death decisions. And then I adopted another Mustang who I have
You
not.
did.
So I'm very excited about her. She's a Mustang out of the Twin Peaks herd, um, in like California and Nevada, and the government shutdown has prevented me from picking her up as of yet.
Yeah.
Won the bid right before the government closed, so I haven't been able to actually, like, set a pickup date for her, but
Yeah.
I'm really excited to meet her and kind of work with her over the winter and, see what kind of horse
Yeah.
she is. But, yeah, just kind of enjoying just being able to sit in whatever season of life this is and, enjoying my horses and, you know, giving them the time off. I think they would probably
Yeah.
boycott if I just instantly started planning another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel that like they liked it? Like, were they content being out there?
Yes. I think yes and no. There were definitely roles that they preferred. Gracie preferred to be a riding horse rather than a pack horse, and her favorite was just to be in the back along for
Really?
the but it was interesting the further that we went on this trip, watching their behavior. Like, obviously, in the beginning, there was a lot of, like, sleeping and laying down and, like, if they're in their pen, it's, like, their rest time, and then, obviously, the better in shape they got, the more they would run around and play like normal horses at the end of the day, which always made me feel good because it's like they still have the energy to be horses and run around.
Yeah. Mhm.
But the further north we got, it became almost like if we took there were a couple days where I would take 2 days off instead of 1, and they would almost get restless to the point of, like, "This isn't normal, like, we need
Mm,
to keep going," and Gracie would, like, walk around the edge of the pen, my little electric pen that I had, like, "Okay, when are we moving? When are we going somewhere?" So it was really interesting because I do think they liked that, like, especially Mustangs, I feel like that's such a natural thing for them is to be nomadic
yeah.
and move around. So it was
Mhm.
interesting to kind of watch that behavior pattern, but there were definitely jobs that they preferred over others. I don't know if I would take
Yeah.
Susie on another long ride. It was interesting how much
Right.
better the Mustangs did, like physically. They held up way better than Susie did. And so I don't know. I don't know if I would take her on another long ride, but yeah, the Mustangs I would say definitely they shined in that environment and I do think that they really liked being out and around and moving. And they did get out twice, and went on a bit of a joy ride or joy laps, but
Yeah.
they never ran back to the previous campsite and they never really went very far. They just went far enough that I had to go search for them.
Were you worried that you'd be out there and not be able to find them at all?
Oh, yeah. Yes, 1,000%. Once
Yeah.
the first time was ironically, it was the day that friendly rolled off the cliff that night at 2 AM,
Oh
they
my
got out.
gosh.
And I was like, Surely they're just gonna be, like, emotionally and physically exhausted. They're not gonna do anything." But no, at 2 AM, they got out of their pen and they ran up and down this road. And yes, I was very worried that I was the road that they were running on went for, like, hundreds of miles, and it accessed all these different mountain
Oh my
ranges and
gosh.
wilderness areas, and I was very concerned that I would never find them again. Because you do hear about, like,
Yeah,
there
and
are
you're like, "My wild
Mustangs.
horses are wild again."
Exactly, you hear about Mustangs that get loose and then they're like, "Goodbye, I will never be back." And yeah, the second time
Yeah.
I lost them for a little bit longer the second time. It was about I think it was like 6 AM and they'd started to get restless because they were ready to go. And so they were running around playing and they ran through the fence and it took me like a couple hours to find them. And I was worried that they were going to again leave and never come back, but both times they let me catch them just fine. They were eating in a meadow the second time, like, I don't know what the big deal is. We just wanted food. So
They're like, "If you can find us, we're fine
yeah,
coming back."
exactly, yeah. But yeah, no, it was there were a couple times that they and I mean, honestly, they never really they weren't I wouldn't say they were seeking the opportunity though. It's not like they were looking for opportunities to get out. Both of those were just kind of like they were
Yeah.
running around, things got out of hand, and they ran through the fence.
They
Uh,
took advantage of it when it happened.
exactly, exactly. So
Yeah. Is there anything you would have done differently looking back and seeing how it all played out?
of that, because thinking about the trip and like wanting to do another one, I've thought about like what could I do different or what could I do better. Um, it's hard because for the trip that I did, I feel like everything went about as well as it could have. Um,
Yeah.
I had a lot of gear, which I don't know if I would have done differently because it was so cold all summer. I was fully expecting to send most of it home. Like I had a lot of
Yeah.
like I had my chaps and I had, coats and all these layers and winter
Mhm.
clothes. But I was never able to send them home because I kept needing them.
Yeah. Yeah. Better sleeping bag maybe.
Yeah, the better sleeping bag for sure would definitely change. But because I did it unsupported, I didn't have like a truck and trailer that I could like stash stuff in that would meet us somewhere. I didn't have a ground
Yeah.
crew. Like there were so many the way that I did it, there were so many like complicated things that and even the 4 horses, like that's a lot. That's a lot to manage. And obviously
It's a lot
probably
to manage.
more than you definitely more than you actually need, but it worked out so well. Like, it would be hard for me to look at that and say, like,
Yeah.
I do think that it worked well. If I were to do it again, like, a second time, I would like to try, like, an ultralight version of it because, like,
Mm.
there are my tent was, like, 8 pounds. Obviously, my sleeping bag was heavy, even though it wasn't rated for cold enough, it was still, like, a heavy sleeping bag. So there would be, like, some ear things, like, maybe try, like, a different
Yeah.
saddle, but yeah, I think for the way that I went about my trip, I think it was about as good I could have done it, but yeah, if I were to do a second or third or whatever, I think it would be fun to try different methods to see what works best for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it all looked amazing. I think a lot of people have been living vicariously through you, although very happy to not be out on the cold nights and, some of watching your horses roll down a cliff.
Yeah,
These are
the
all
high
things that we would be happy to not experience.
yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool to watch it and see you do it and like, such a huge thing and like even just talking about the stuff that you planned to like take into account and how you made it all happen is really, really cool. Do you think you're gonna be sharing the training you do with your new Mustang?
Yes, that is the hope. I
That'll
would
be
love
awesome.
to I documented the first 3 kind of, but I didn't
Mhm.
really I don't know, there's a lot looking back that I wish that I'd documented differently or more in depth, and so, yeah, I'm hoping to share kind of my new journey with this next Mustang, and then also just I've learned a lot about how Mustangs work and think and function, and so I'm excited to
Yeah.
try things a little bit differently. There's certain things that I'd like to try with a softer approach than I did with the other ones. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm hoping to document it and also I'm trying to like on Instagram, I'm trying to
Yeah.
work through sequentially like the trip again to kind of post some of the things that I didn't post the first time. So I'm hoping to kind of like share the
Mhm.
trip in a better, like more complete way. Although honestly, a YouTube format would probably be easier because I could do longer videos rather than the 2 minutes or whatever that you get on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, get out there, get your YouTube channel going. It's easy, you can post to both.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
It's
that'll
currently
be
my
really cool.
computer's the restricting factor, so we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, that does make a difference. Well, it'll be really cool to watch you work with the new Mustang, especially with your experience of like being with your horses 24/7, because I'm sure that there's stuff that you notice now and like ways you know your horse now that you just wouldn't by, living beside them in the modern world where
Yeah.
you guys compared to living together for 6 months straight, like sleeping together, spending all day together.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I am excited and I'm hoping I mean, obviously, I think every horse person, horse trainer, you're always growing and so acknowledging that and trying to do better by your next horse is always the goal. So I'm hoping that I can take some of those lessons that I
Yeah.
learned and see if we can find a better method each time, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a process. I think it's especially a process with Mustangs. So, yeah, it's cool to see what you can learn and what you can take and experience and yeah, then share with other people who are wanting, to do similar things in their life. So that's going to be really fun to follow you.
Yeah.
Definitely will be following for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other like big lessons you learned or things we didn't hit that you're like that was yeah.
Not off the
No,
top
that's
of my head.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's such a big there's so many things, right? There's so many little stories, and there's even just going back through, like, videos that I've like, looking back at my videos that I took, I was like, "Oh, I forgot about that one."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like it's gonna be just kind of this, like, long process of, yeah, remembering the little things and kind of appreciating them after the
Yeah.
fact. But, yeah, nothing that I can really think of.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, and I still think a movie would be great if I can maybe hook you up with some people that do that, I don't know, we'll see.
Yes.
We've had some on
Yeah,
here who do horse stuff,
that would be pretty
but yeah,
wild.
that would be really neat, but it'll be exciting to see what comes next for you,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's gonna be fun. Well, thanks for coming and doing this and, like, sharing it, it was fun seeing the clips on Instagram. It's also really cool to, like, hear, like, the things that were going on in your mind when a lot of the things you brought up, I'm like, "I remember seeing that video,"
Yeah.
and just to hear what that was like, because I know I was thinking, "Oh my gosh," like, the cold, I would be dying in the cold, or, like, the trees, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, all that sawing has gotta be exhausting," so,
Yes.
yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing all about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. It's fun to do a second interview, like, after the fact, and again, it's just wild that it actually happened.
I know, it's so cool. It's so cool that we were able to talk before and then you went and did it, and it was amazing and crazy and super challenging and yeah, and new things now. What's the next adventure, I guess, is the next question.
Yes, yeah, I'll get back to you on that one, I'll let you know.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.